Hi, I'm Ash and this is Two Thin Coats. Today we're going to be looking at the Assault Intercessor Paint Set for Warhammer 40k. As with most people my age, my painting journey started with one of these, the Warhammer 40k paint set. Came with 5 Space Marines and 9 paints. And although the paints have long since dried out, and the Space Marines have had many coats of paint put on them, they're still in decent condition. This came with a paintbrush and the paints were Blood Red, Ultramarines Blue, Skull White, Chaos Black, Bad Moon Yellow, Snakebite Leather, Bolt Gun Metal, Bronze Flesh and Dark Angel Green. So it didn't matter which chapter you wanted to paint, there was something there for everyone. Let's take a look at what Games Workshop have to offer us now. The set we're going to be looking at is the Intercessor Space Marine Starter Set. Comes with 6 paints, one's a shade, one's a technical paint, 3 Space Marines, it's £22.50, which is cheaper than I paid for mine back in 1999. It is the perfect starting place if you want to collect Space Marines, and why wouldn't you? So we've got Macragee Blue, we've got Balthazar Gold, Coex White, Abaddon Black, Agrax Earthshade, Astro Granite, 3 Push Fit Space Marines, and of course a brush. I'm going to show you how we can turn just these 4 paints it comes with to produce a high quality miniature. I'm going to just use my wet palette to show you the blending process. You don't need a wet palette when I'm painting the miniature itself. I'll be using just an old piece of board that I mix on, and the wet palette's just to show you the blending. So I'm just putting a blob of white, blob of the Macragee Blue, and also add black and then Balthazar. So by taking a small amount of the Macragee Blue, add a little bit of black, you can make a much darker blue. And with that then, mix a little bit of white into it, it dulls it down. If you add white and the Macragee Blue, you get a very vibrant blue, perfect for the highlights. Add a little bit more white and it goes even lighter still, so you're able to blend and you eventually get different layers of highlight for each step. You can see the 4 different colours that we've been able to create. And we do the same with the gold. By adding a little bit of black into it, we're able to make a much darker gold that will be perfect for all the recesses. And then by adding a little bit of the gold to the white, we're able to make something that will be perfect for the highlights. Right, so let's put the wet palette away and get the tile out. I normally only use a wet palette if I'm doing wet blends, so if you're starting out, just using a tile or the lid of a plastic container, or if you've got a proper palette, here you can see the same blends on there. The only advantage of a wet palette is that it keeps your paints wet, that's why it's called a wet palette. So this is the Space Marine we're going to be painting. It needs a little bit of cleanup, so I'm just getting my Stanley knife and just taking off some of the flash, the mould lines across the top there. Just makes it easier for when we're painting it later. Just gives it a neater paint job. I've glued the head and the front and back of the body together, but I'm keeping the arms and the backpack separate for now. It'll just make it easier for painting in some of the hard to reach areas. You can put it all together and paint it as one, It's just some of the areas a bit more tricky to get to. The base I've got isn't flat, so I won't be using the Astro Granite to base it. I'll be painting the base using the same colours that we've got in the set. Just using some shot glasses and some blue tack just to help hold all the sub-assemblies. Means you haven't got to hold the miniature itself. So the first step is we take the macragee blue, add a little bit of water to it on the palette, get it nice and thin, and we're going to apply to all the parts we want to be blue. We'll start off with the arms. Try and avoid the gun and the base, because we're going to paint the base grey after, and the gun we're going to do it in black. Pick out some of the areas in a light grey and a gold. And just apply this all over. This is why it's easier to do it as a sub-assembly. Able to get in all those areas that would have been glued in. You can see there, those hard to reach areas. You just want to get a nice coat of blue on them before we glue this together. When we're doing some of the highlights, it won't matter if they're glued together for that. Make it easier to see which direction the lights come in, which bits would fall into shadow. So just apply nice and even coat over the whole thing. Wait for it to dry and then apply a second coat. And once you've got 2 even coats, it's a nice deep blue colour. Just going to add a little bit of the white to the macragee blue, and I'm going to use the side of one of the shot glasses to show you the effect that we're going to go for. So I've already painted the macragee blue straight onto here, it's dry, and then using that lighter colour we're going to sort of stipple in the higher areas, and although it will sort of leave a stark line between the macragee blue and the lighter blue, once we've put a wash over the whole thing it'll tie it all in nicely. So just stipple that on in the highest areas. So we'll start with the top of the arm. So any bits that would be catching the light, avoid underneath. Might be easier with the shoulder pads to put it together so you can see which direction the arm's facing. At the minute, the stark contrasting colours will look a bit extreme at first, but don't worry, once you put the wash on, it's all going to tie in and it'll blend it in really nice, and you'll get a nice gradient from the light to the original macragee blue and then to a darker blue that we put underneath after. Now while I'm just applying that highlight, I've got a question. I've always called it macragee blue ever since I first had the Battle of Macragee when that came out, which was about 2003, 2004, something like that. But I was watching a video the other day on YouTube and someone called it Macrag blue, and I feel like I might have been saying it wrong my entire life. If anyone could let me know which is the right way of saying it, that'd be great, because I feel like a bit of an idiot at the minute. Is it Macrag? Is it macragee? I'm not sure. Been having this debate all day while I've been recording this, so I might switch between the two. Sometimes I might refer to it as Macrag, sometimes I might call it macragee, because I'm just not sure what's correct. So we're just mixing up the highlight colour again and just run out on my palette, and just got a few extra bits. I think I added a little bit of extra white into it that time, and I'm just stippling the areas I've already highlighted and just brightening it up a little bit more, but just catching the very tips of where the highlight will be. It's almost like dry brushing, but you don't want to rub it over the entire miniature. You just want to catch those higher raised areas that would catch the light.
Everything the light touches is our kingdom.
Once all those areas are dry, we're then going to take the macragee blue and the Abaddon black, mix about a 50-50, get a nice dark blue in there, and we're going to do exactly the same as we just did. We're going to stipple it on, but instead of putting this on the high areas that would be hitting the light, we're going to go for the shadow areas, so the underside of the arms, and I'm literally just stippling it on exactly the same, making sure that we're leaving some of the original macragee blue showing. Get the underside, the arms, not forgetting the hand. On that hand on the weapon, don't forget there is a thumb on the other side. Don't forget about his groin.
That's what she said.
And the underside of his knee pads. And the underside of his shoulder pads. So now we're going to make our own wash, just using this old plastic lid to do this. You can use the Ogrex Earthshade, but it will leave a bit of a stain over the whole thing, and because we're using blue, we want a bluey black wash. So we use the macragee blue, just a small blob of macragee blue, small blob of Abaddon black, and then a lot of water. You can add a tiny drop of dish soap into it if you want, and that'll help it flow better over the whole miniature. I haven't done with this one because I'm only making a small amount. Mix that up. Once it's thoroughly mixed, you might want to add a bit more water. You then take each of your blue parts and apply this over the whole thing. Try and watch out for any areas that it might pool. If it pools in the areas that we've already darkened up, that shouldn't be a problem, but if it's pooling on the lighter areas, just dab your brush with a cloth and then draw the moisture away from those areas. Just apply this over the whole miniature. The base of the miniature I'm using had got quite a cool rubble design to it, so I'm going to base this with Abaddon black first. Just work it into all the recesses. This first pass is very watered down, just to make sure that it completely goes in all the recesses. The first pass is almost the consistency of a wash. The second one will be slightly thicker, and it might need a third coat. While we've got the Abaddon black out, we'll base coat the bolt gun. Just be careful around all the areas you've already painted, especially on the handle of the bolt gun. Make sure not to get any of that black on the blue bits. If you do, we can touch it up later with the original colours, but it's just easier to not have to clean up the mistakes if you don't make them in the first place. Once that's completely covered in black and dried, then add in a small amount of white to the Abaddon black to get a very dark grey. Drying the brush off there, you can see how much paint it's leaving on my thumb. We're just using downward motions, just picking out all the details with a nice grey dry brush of the whole bolt gun there. And now it's on to the gold areas. So we take the gold, the pigments are too dispersed within the paint, and so I'll end up taking 4 or 5 coats before you get a nice even coverage. Just picking out all the gold areas. So on this miniature, it's the edge of the shoulder pads, as well as the aquila on his chest, and also on the side of the gun. Now going back to Abaddon black, we're going to be picking out all the areas of the undersuit. So in the armpits, in the elbow joints, the back of the knees, and around the groin again. all those ribbed areas.
They're ribbed for your pleasure.
Going back to the base now, mixing up a lighter grey and then dry brushing over all the details. Just picking out all the high edges, focusing on mainly, but just trying to pick everything out. Then doing a dry brush with pure white, getting a lot more paint off the brush, just getting the very tips of all the raised areas, all those rock and stone details. Then we're on to Agrax Earthshade. Going to be using this on the gold areas first of all. So the acrylic on the chest, getting it into the eye sockets as well as the feathers. We'll put a little bit on the shoulder pads, and don't forget about the acrylic on the gun as well. So again, just a little bit on the skull, a little bit over the wings. While we've got the Agrax Earthshade out, we'll put a little bit on the base. Dab this in areas, not covering the whole thing, just the cracked earth areas and any flat areas, and avoiding any of the boulders and stone. I'm going to highlight some of the black areas. I've based some of the areas on the backpack in black. These would normally be like gunmetal, but we haven't got gunmetal in here. So I've based them black, and then just a little highlight of a grey, mixing up white and black. Just picking the top 3 edges of those vents on the side, as well as the curved top edge on the top vents. Alternatively, you could have painted these gold. I just think it's a little bit too showy, especially on a normal Space Marine. Maybe on a commander or a lieutenant wouldn't be too bad. Once you've done those little areas on the backpack, you're going to do the same on the bolt gun. Just pick out a few edge highlights on the top of the bolt gun, using the side of the brush on those corners, and not forgetting the barrel of the gun. Now on to painting the purity seals. Normally the seal itself would be a wax seal, a red seal, and then like parchment colour coming from it. Because we haven't got parchment colour, we're going to be basing it with the white, then adding a small amount of the Agrax Earthshade into the white to try and get that parchment colour. Obviously we can't mix a red, so I'll be going back in and painting that gold later. If you've got a finer brush, you can go in with the white and just pick out the eye lenses. It's quite difficult to get in there. It's quite a tight hole.
Repeat after me. That's what she said.
But if you do make any mistakes, you can touch it back up with the original colour. And then let's put it all together. Now it's a push fit model, so you don't need glue. I am gluing this together, but you don't need to. It does hold together really well without any glue. Plastic glue or super glue, either's fine. I'm just using super glue because I have painted over all the contact points. Once the arms are on, finally attach the backpack. As you can see it's quite a tight fit. That's why you don't need the glue. And that's where we are so far. It's already looking really good. Just the last few little steps just to really take it to the next level. So using white now with tiny little dot of Agrax Earthshade in there, we're able to make a nice colour for the parchment. Because white is quite a difficult colour to go down anyway, and we're mixing it with the shade, it might take 2 or 3 coats. Don't forget to get the underside as well. We'll just put that all over the parchment areas. Now to take the gold to the next step, I'm going to get the gold and the white, mix about a 50-50, and this will be a perfect colour for highlighting all those edges. So on the top of the shoulder pads, they're where the light will catch, as well as the top of the skulls on the Aquillas. And if you want to pick out any of the individual feathers, just pick them out towards the tip, the furthest point away. Also just putting a little dot and an edge highlight along the corners of the shoulder pads as well. And there you have it. The only thing to do now is apply a Baden Black around the rim of the base. As you can see, this starter set is perfect for a beginner. It's got everything you need to paint Space Marines, and then take in the same things we've learned here, just add in a few extra colours in. You're able to take it to completely the next level, where you can paint something like this. I'll be uploading the video on how I painted this Space Marine in an upcoming video, as well as painting my first White Scar Outrider. And I have just subscribed to the Warhammer 40,000 Imperium, the Hitachi Part Works. Waiting for my first delivery of that, so I'll be opening that on the channel very soon. Be a good place to start as well. It's got all the rules, dice, even a game mat for you to play with. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe.